I'm Carla with Race to Walk, and these are just some thoughts on a Sunday. And today we're going to be talking about the appeal of the gospel. But before we started, just a little bit about the Sunday update. So every week I do an update about where we're at in helping some Afghan Christians in their efforts to escape the Taliban. And I also share how I got involved in this because it's a little bit of a crazy story. My friend Mark Ritchie, he's an author, and he is an evangelist, but in his day job, he was a commodities trader. And I actually got to know him through his books. I read his book, Spirit of the Rainforest, did a review. He thanked me for it, and that kind of led to the beginning of our connection. And I did some small projects for him, over the years. And in 2021, no, in 2020, he sent me a message. He said, "Hey, be praying for me. I have the opportunity to speak at a conference in Pakistan." So this is via Zoom. This is in the middle of the pandemic, or towards the beginning, obviously. But then a year later, he sent me a message, and he had seen my video of my Bible study on Job 19. He said, "Great teaching. You want to teach a women's Bible study in Pakistan?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And that just started my involvement. And then from that, he would just literally, I never knew specifically when I would be doing something. He would just drop a Zoom link, and if I was available, no notice. And if I was available, how often do you get an opportunity to do that? So I would just sit in on some of his Bible study lessons. I spoke at 2 pastors' conferences in Pakistan, and a couple times he asked me to fill in for some of his Bible studies. And in a year ago, in October 2022, he asked me to fill in for his Afghan Bible studies. And at that time, Pakistan was cracking down on foreign nationals that were in the country without a valid visa. And so there was a lot of concern because it's very difficult to get visas for Afghans. And they were also trying to find a way to, make it to a Western country, someplace where they could not have to worry about being killed because of, being a Christian. That's how I got started in this. And I told them in the beginning that, I knew nothing about immigration, that I didn't have connections, that, I wasn't like Mark. I'm not retired. I'm not independently wealthy. I was just asked to teach a Bible study, and that's why I was brought in, and but that I could ask questions. So I've tried to make that clear, and I have to repeat that multiple times as we've been going along in this. But that's how it all began. It was just me writing a book review and doing a Bible study. That's how I got involved in this. Mark, on the other hand, his family has been involved in the area for a long time. His dad was in the military in Afghanistan in the 1950s when it was under a monarchy. So Mark spent 5 years of his youth there. His dad they've done ministry since then. And if you go back and look at my very first weekly update, I talk about Mark's meeting with one of the groups that had just come into our group, and the Afghans. And his dad had been in Afghanistan building a hospital, and he died in a car accident. And he said, "We don't know if it was sabotage or not, but we do know that the doctor that treated my dad was shot. So the odds are that it was sabotage." And then his mom had been doing ministry in Pakistan and Afghanistan for decades after that, survived, church bombings, just they've been in the middle of it. And both of his parents are actually buried in Kabul. So he has a very strong connection to the Afghan people. And I think that's how the Pakistanis contacted Mark to begin with to do some of these teachings and conferences is because I think there was some publicity about these two Americans that were buried in Kabul. His mom died in early 2020, so I think that's how that all started. But anyway, so Mark has experience. I did not, but I've been learning. Another person who has experience is Mark's friend Don Shire, and Don also has a ministry, Don Shire Ministries International, and Don agreed to partner with us in that any donations made on his website at donshireministries.org, if you select Race to Walk when you donate, it will go to help the Afghans. So that was really helpful in the beginning, pretty much a year ago. Right now, it was spent not only figuring out how to get visas for them, but also how to get money to them. And I did not know about Don at the time, was not in contact with him, and if I had known, then all this would have been way easier or a year ago, it would have been a lot easier because Don knows how to do those things. I had to figure things out, and then I met Don, so it was all experience. It was an education. So that's how we got involved in this, or how I got involved in this. That's a little bit of an overview. So what are we doing? I can't even tell you. I do weekly Bible studies with them on Mondays. Right now we're in the book of Romans, and I've been doing that actually a year because the beginning of December, Mark had some health issues, asked me to take over the Bible studies, and I've continued to teach those. So I've been teaching Bible studies with them for a year. They also, my Bible study at church, we're still having a hybrid class, and so several of the Afghans that have better English skills will come in on my Sunday class too at my church. So anyway, that's what we've been doing, but also just trying to help get them to the next step. We've had a few people that have had an opportunity for some outs, but usually there's some blocks to them even be able to get a path out. You would say, okay, if a country is going to give them, resettle them in asylum, that they would just handle it and understand that they're in a dire situation and that they don't have, the funds to get all this documentation. No. And depending on the country, they require valid passports, birth certificates, exit permit, all of these things. And even I was explaining a month or so ago, that one of the countries was requiring police clearances, which are basically worthless because Pakistan does not have a central reporting system. So you go into an office, it means nothing. It's just an opportunity for corrupt Pakistani police to extort more money from the Afghans, but they still require it. So we've been trying to get them what they need so they can actually get out. Also, just keeping them going. They are not allowed to work so if they're there on a visa, temporary visa, they're not allowed to work in Pakistan. And originally, when the U.S. and NATO allies said that we're going to stand by our Afghan allies, they were told they can't be resettled from Afghanistan because there's no, very few countries have embassies in Afghanistan. So they had to go to a third country to be resettled. And so a lot of people said, okay, we need to get out because they knew they were under threat from the Taliban. And so they went to other countries like Iran or Pakistan, or Turkey, who are now all deporting Afghans back to Afghanistan. And everybody, including the U.S., has just been dragging their feet and really not been all that concerned about keeping their promise. So all of them are in need. If people had means, they're somewhere else now. So everybody who's left has some severe needs. There's also people who are still in Afghanistan. the situation is really dire in Afghanistan as well, and so there's just a lot of need all around. But it's just kind of a day-to-day thing, basically. So what we do, we do Bible studies, we pray a lot, and we just try to keep going from day to day. That's what we've been doing. But if you'd like to help my people, you can go to downshareministries.org and select Race Walk. If you'd like it to go to a particular area, you can, in the comments, you can put that, whether it's passports or living expenses or education or documentation, whatever. If you'd like to specify it for a specific thing, you can do that. But topic for today, so the thoughts, the appeal of the gospel. This week was interesting. It was very, there's a lot of things going on, and it was emotionally draining. Not that that is unusual, but it was just, I don't know. I was super tired this week for a lot of reasons. And part of it is I realized just didn't realize this until last night. I had basically 2 events that were thrown in at the last minute that I was trying to, that's really what it was. Sometimes I look at something like, okay, let's do this thing, and not really think about the scope of all of what it will take to do it well. So there were 2 things that came up kind of last minute. I wasn't able to do everything I would like to done, but I did the best I could in the time that I had. So anyway, one of those things was a meeting with some Afghan Christians that are still in Afghanistan, and they wanted to present their case, and this is on Zoom. And the person that connected me with them had mentioned it before, but there was a situation that came up last week. There was a Shiite cleric in Iran that was basically trash talking the Taliban and mocking them because a report came out that there had been 500 churches in Kabul alone, as well as like thousands of brothels. And in Islam, especially in the extreme form of Islam that the Taliban follow, they look at brothels and churches basically on the same level. And the concern was that this would cause the Taliban to further crack down on Christians. So I think that already has been happening. I don't think it's a new thing. We had a couple of people that came into our group that were in the same Bible or home church as a pastor, an Afghan pastor that's now here in Houston. And it's from what they were saying, it seemed to me like the Taliban have likely ID'd the people in this Afghan pastor's church and was tracking them down. The person, his name is Andre, that has resettled 1,500 people in Brazil, Afghans in Brazil. I had contacted him a couple months ago about somebody had asked for help for a friend of theirs who's a Christian that had been arrested and was in jail. And Andre had said then that he knew of, I can't remember the number, that he had said that the Taliban was tracking down Christians. So this is several months ago. So this isn't a new thing, that them tracking them down. But the concern was of Christians in Afghanistan, and particularly Kabul, was that this was going to cause an escalation. And so the person who translates for me that connected me with these Afghan Christians, he said, I'm getting a lot of phone calls, not phone calls, but WhatsApp calls and messages from people in Afghanistan. They've been undercover Christians, and a lot of people don't know that they're Christians, and so they're very concerned. And so they wanted to have a discussion about this, and he told them that I'm with a big organization, that I'm well educated, and I teach good Bible studies. So the last two are true. Last two things are true. I do have a good education and I do teach good Bible studies, but I'm not with a big organization. And I don't know where he got that, because I did show him, like, I did take them on a tour at my church when they came in. Said I go to a big church, but I mean, they know what I'm doing, but they're not they're not like involved in what I'm doing, if that makes sense. So I'm like, oh my goodness, like, he's kind of talked this up, and I'm like, I didn't even know what they were going to say, because they said they wanted to present more information. I didn't even know. And I'm thinking, I have to get some people here that are actually kind of a big deal, or at least try to hear this. So I told him to schedule it for Thursday. We'd have a Zoom call meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then it's just been a really busy week. I can't even remember. I was doing some other things. It's just been one thing after another. And I was thinking, I got to try to get some people here. So I just started, I think this was Monday when we set it. And I was working on some things. And so I did send some emails on Tuesday, but I didn't really like sit down and like pretty much all afternoon and evening on Monday. I was just like, okay, who might be a good person to be there to listen to this? I don't know what it, I didn't know what it was going to be. And I just started sending messages and emails, and I can't remember if I might have made some phone calls too. So there were a couple people that said they were going to try to make it, and then at 9:20 on Thursday morning, so 40 minutes before the call, I got a phone call, and it was from, I'm not going to tell you who it was from, but it was somebody that, like, I had been telling my people I need to get a contact, and this specific type of contact. I need this, and the person that called was actually like the perfect person to hear what they were going to say. So they did not say anything on the call. They told me they weren't going to, but they heard the story. The other person that was there was Andre, the person who's resettled 1,500 Afghans in Brazil, and he is somebody who had a business in Afghanistan. They left Afghanistan, I think in 2015. I think I have this right, in 2015, but they've been trying to get their employees out on SIV applications ever since then. So I don't know if it's a business or a nonprofit. I'm not sure. But anyway, they've been trying to get their people out. And in 2021, they saw, like in June, they saw what was going to be coming. And they started talking and trying to figure out ways to get their people out. And he said they had about 400 people that they took to the airport in Kabul in August, and they were only able to get something like 75 people out. And then after that, they had to try to figure out a way to get people out. And he said we looked basically the entire world over to find a place for them where they could be resettled and be safe. And they really, the only open door was Brazil. And so they had to build, it's just amazing to me when I think about what they've done, but they had to build an entire evacuation and resettlement system in Brazil, because Brazil does not have a resettlement system at all. They're actually just now starting, they're in the process of certifying resettlement agencies in Brazil, but they have not had it. And so they had to build from the ground up evacuation and a resettlement system. And as they were doing all this and getting people out, the other organizations that were trying to get their people out came to him, and so that's where the 1,500 came into play. So he has a lot of contacts in Afghanistan, and he said we moved some really sensitive people, and So he was there, which was amazing because he knows the situation, he knows the language, he understands the dynamics. He just understands what's going on there. And so what they were discussing is they were talking about what was going on particularly for the Hazara, and they were confirming that what was being said in the reports, the news reports, was actually true. That there were that many churches, and primarily in Dartsi, Barchi, I don't know. I'm probably not saying that right. I figure there's a lot of English words I don't say right either. So anyway, it's a Hazara community, and the Hazaras are an ethnic minority, and they've been, basically under persecution by the dominant tribe in Afghanistan and Pakistan, actually, which are the Pashtuns. And so in this province, or this district of Kabul, it's probably about 300 or 400 of those were in that one district, and then the remaining were primarily in this another district, which is also primarily Hazara. And they were just saying that, there's a lot of Hazaras who are Christians, who are undercover Christians, that Christianity is a lot more widespread in, particularly in some of the cities, but that people would even expect. And he was the person that was, there were two Afghans that are in Kabul, but he was explaining why this is, and why why Hazaras reject Islam and accept Christianity. And one of those things was, and I thought was really interesting, I really wish I had recorded this. I didn't, because just, I understand that they're in a dangerous situation. So I try to be sensitive to that. And I did take notes, and then my pen ran out. But he said that part of the reason that they recognize the truth of Christianity is just how it treats people versus how the God of the Bible treats people. And so in the Bible, all people are equal. And in Islam, there's built-in partialities. There's, Muslims, and then everyone else. And then also the way that the certain sects of Islam even treat people within Islam, and their fellow Muslims. The other thing is that in Islam, women are property, and that women aren't valued. And in the Bible, it teaches that we're all equal, that there's no difference between Jew or Greek, male or female, slave or free. And that is part of what is appealing to the Hazaras individually, but also I think in Muslims generally. I've heard that multiple times from former Muslims who became Christians, that very often one of the big reasons is how Islam treats women. And the irony of this is that in the U.S., we have a big push by corporate church to push Christianity as an alignment rather than as an act of faith or a matter of faith, or that, anything about the reality of the person of Jesus. And when they're doing that, they're basically taking the same position as Islam about people. Like, there's things that I see on Twitter, that's where I go to get news and updates about what's going on in Afghanistan and Pakistan, because our media doesn't cover it most of the time. So I'll see these stories coming out of Afghanistan about what the Taliban are doing, and then I'll see things that, Greg Abbott or Ken Paxton are doing here, and it's just so eerily similar. It literally scares me sometimes, like just how similar it is. And it's also very concerning to me that the church generally, there's a lot of people that don't even recognize that as being unbiblical and anti-Christian. It's actually the spirit of the Antichrist. And people don't see it, and they back, if somebody says that it talks about God or the Bible, but what they're promoting and saying and doing are opposite. A lot of times people don't seem to see that. And I have to think that, people are, it just seems like it's not so much about Christianity itself or like concern for people about, really wanting them to have the well-being and the peace of the shalom of the gospel, but just maintaining their position of power. And so they're trying to dictate and force. And do you think maybe that might be why there has been a steady decline of the church in the United States? Because they're not being the church. The church is the body of Christ, right? And if you don't recognize that, then what do you have? When you deny the conviction of the Holy Spirit, when you don't think that you have anything to repent of, when you're not, David says, create in me a clean heart, oh God, renew a loyal spirit within me. Don't banish me from your presence, and don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and make me willing to obey you. All of those things. And then verse 13 in chapter 51 says, and then I will teach your ways to the rebels, and they will return to you. And we don't think that we have to do that. We don't think we need a clean heart. We don't think we need the Holy Spirit. We don't think that we need to be loyal to the truth of the gospel, that we can do whatever we want and use the gospel any way that we want. And then we wonder why the church is in decline. It's because we're acting more along the lines of the tenets of Islam than the tenets of Christ. That's why. We are doing the exact same things, claiming that it's Christianity that is causing people to reject Islam. So right now, the big fury in Texas is there's a woman who has a pregnancy that she went to court to be able to get an abortion. The baby is not going to make it, and the pregnancy for her puts her at risk of severe physical problems, and it's very high risk for her when they know that the child is not surviving. And one court allowed her to have an abortion, and Ken Paxton basically threatened the hospitals in Houston, saying that they'd go after them if they performed it. And then there was another say of that. I think right now it's blocked. I don't know. I didn't look at it. But this is the thing. This is looking at women as basically incubators. It's like once you get pregnant, you're not seen as a person anymore. And I think, it just has to do with control and power. I mean, this is the thing about men in general. Like, you just have no idea, like, what it's like to be pregnant. I mean, I had pretty easy pregnancies, and honestly, I hated being pregnant. I mean, and I had no reason not to, like them. I just really did not enjoy being pregnant. And again, mine were easy. And there's some people that they have problems all the way through. My cousin had to be she had to be on bed rest, I think, the last couple of months of her first pregnancy, and on bed rest the entire pregnancy for her second pregnancy. They ended up adopting. I have another friend, my friend Annie, who, and I'm going to say this because she's written about it in an Unexpected Journal. They lost a child, and she's had multiple miscarriages, and you just have no idea like what kind of emotional toll that takes. It's like, not only physically but emotionally. And she said, this was actually in a discussion that we were having on contraception. I really wish I could share that with you because it's just a 700 post, 40,000 word thread. Started on contraception, went into all these different life issues. It should be a book. Nobody else agrees, so, or I can't get agreement on it, so I'm probably going to have to write a book about it, like when I'm going to have time to do that. But anyway, but in this whole discussion, she just said, I couldn't have handled another pregnancy that ended in miscarriage. I just mentally couldn't have handled it. I saw, it's on a local group, I saw somebody posted anonymously for help that she'd had 3 miscarriages in 2 years. Do you have any idea? I mean, she sounded like close to, just in the post, like close to suicidal. Like you just have no idea. And then you have jackasses like Ken Paxton showboating based on, using somebody's life as an issue. Like what they want you to do is to wait until the baby dies and you're at risk for septic shock before they will perform any procedure. And this is the thing. I'm not for abortion in that, there's a lie out there that Roe versus Wade gave people the right to end another life. It didn't. What is Roe versus Wade was about personhood. When does life begin? That's what Roe versus Wade was about. And that was a very good question to ask, especially when you consider all the issues that we have, arising issues with AI and, what truly is life? What is a person? And if we can't answer these questions, I mean, we've spent the last 50 years just allowing that question to be used as a political football rather than really looking at what the question actually is. So, no, you do not have a right to end another person's life for your convenience, but the question is, when does life begin? And I know that there's some people who like easy answers that say it begins at conception. This is the thing. I understand that argument. It's a bad one because we are not, as human beings, we are not simply matter. And one of us has his Genesis 2:7 moment, when God breathed life and into Adam and he became man. So we are more than matter. We are mind, body, and spirit. And the question is, when does that beginning actually occur? So if you say it's conception, then what you're saying is that we are no different than all the rest of creation, that we're just matter, and that's not the case. So I understand the argument. Again, I think it's a bad one, but also a woman doesn't stop becoming a person when she becomes pregnant, and her life is just as valuable as the child's. And actually, historically, if you look at what the thought has been, is that the preference was given to the woman because up until modern medicine and when we had vaccinations, the fatality rate of just being born was 50%. Like 50% of children did not make it to the age 15. And so when you talk about where the preference goes, the woman was the one who was living, who had survived, who could have other children, versus a child that may not make it past her first year. So that has been the historical position, but because of modern medicine, it's almost like, even though modern medicine has saved women's lives, it's almost like it's caused it to be devalued because we can do so much to save a woman's life in pregnancy. So anyway, but that's what's going on right now. And they don't, he just shows that Ken Paxton doesn't value women. He's just around being an idiot, trying to get people to ignore his own criminal actions. Total crook. Anyway, but this is a position that we're taking, and we wonder why people are rejecting the church. When you don't value other people, and especially 50% of the population is women, then why should you be surprised if people reject what you're selling? So anyway, it was really interesting to listen to them. One of the things that Andre said was that every day he would, when he speaks to people in Kabul, he hears more and more people being baptized. He said that that there are more Christians in Afghanistan now than there were when the Taliban took over. And I've actually thought about that, because what the Taliban are doing is just the absolute literal application of the words of Muhammad. What they're doing, Muhammad supports. And the thing about the Quran and Islam in general is that people can have very different ideas of what Islam is about and what it teaches based on who they're taught by. One of the things that Nabil Qureshi, that I took a class from Islam and Christianity on, said was that when Muslims read the Quran, the surahs are read individually. They stand alone. So any imam can take some of those surahs and do their own teaching on them, and they'll be in line with the Quran, because that's just how you read the Quran. It's not like the Bible, where it's supposed to be read in context and as a whole. It's just different in that way. And so that's why you can't assume what, and this is true of Christians too. This is true of Christians too. If they don't read the Bible for themselves, and even if they do read the Bible, you can't assume what anybody believes. I mean, you just need to talk to them and ask them. But especially with Muslims, you can't assume that you know what they think or they believe, unless if you talk to them, because you don't know who they've been taught by. And one of my daughters is actually minoring in Arabic studies, and she said she has Muslim friends, and she said, well, does the Quran actually say to kill like non-Muslims? And I said, yeah. She's like, well, my friends who are Muslims say they don't. I'm thinking, okay, well, I sent her an article with a list of the surahs that actually say that. So just because somebody is Muslim doesn't necessarily mean that they know what the Quran says or what it teaches or the context of it, especially if they've been in the West. They just look at the 5 pillars of Islam, which, I don't think most of us would have an issue with the 5 pillars of Islam, apart from the worship of Allah, who is not God. So he's not the God of the Bible. So you can't make assumptions. But what the Taliban are doing is Islam straight in action. And so I would think that if someone is looking at what the Taliban are saying and doing, and looking at what the impact of their life is on their own life, right, as an individual, then it does not surprise me that causes more and more Afghans to reject Islam. But again, the same is true of Christianity if we act more in line with the God of Islam rather than Jesus. Jesus said, the enemy does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And one of the things that Andre said as he was explaining what or why so many Hazaras had come to become Christians, he said that, as a people, they've been discriminated against for a long time by the Pashtuns in Afghanistan. Hazaras have been Shiite, and Iran is Shiite, but he said there's a lot of manipulation on the part of Iranian imams, and so they reject that too. And one of the things that one of the Afghans in Kabul said was that, we are basically, they're like outcasts in their own country, and they're not even treated like citizens of their own country. And because of this ostracization, he said that they really identify with the gospel in that even in suffering, there's still hope and there's still purpose. And he said they identify with the God who suffered for them because their life has been so much suffering. This is part of the appeal of the gospel. It's not just, Jesus loves you, Christmas, angels singing, but it's about a God who cares about all of the problems that we're going through and all of the hard realities of life, and that he walked through it with us and for us. And he still does. It's what Emmanuel means. It means God with us. And that's what I talked about in my stream last week, that they have had to get to know God in the middle of the trial, in the middle of the chaos and suffering, that they're not becoming Christians because they're going to a church where it has good networking or connections. They're becoming a Christian in spite of the fact that it could get them killed. And just like in other countries where the church is under persecution, the church is growing because all they really have is Jesus, right? And it has to be real, or else they're not going to be there. That's what's appealing, is the truth of the gospel, the truth of the presence of the Holy Spirit. Just somebody showing up in church or handing out a food basket really isn't. I mean, it's not the doing or just the showing up, it's the being. You have to literally be able to live it. And if we have a lot of Christians who are just showing up because it's cultural or it's advantageous to them, then it's not surprising that so many people are rejecting that. So anyway, those are my thoughts. That was this week. The other thing that happened this week is we had my friend Leslie, who has been helping me with a couple of the families. She did a fundraiser for the families she's been working with, and so she's Jewish. She made latkes and had a fundraiser yesterday. It was just, I'm not even going to get into the whole thing. It's been a week. It's been an emotionally draining week, and also I don't think I got enough sleep, and it was just yesterday after it was all over. She invited me to a Hanukkah thing, and I was like, I knew some of the people there, but I was like, I don't think I would be very good company today because I am an introvert. I can be friendly and social, but after the week I've had, it's just been, I just didn't have it in me to be around a bunch of people I didn't know very well. I mean, I know them, but not well, and it would have been more emotional effort than I was really able to do at the time. So, we still have donations coming in from that. So I think it was successful. And, no, I don't think it is. It was successful. We had 3 goals, that we're trying to make. And I know we met the first one. So we're on stage 2 of that. And I think they might make that. We still have some donations coming in, but anyway, that was an interesting day yesterday. And, let's see what else. I made some notes. What else has been happening? Okay, so this is what really annoyed me. Several things annoy me. So I've mentioned before several times that there's a program, Welcome Corps, that was started in January. And I had been explaining to my people, why our immigration system is such a mess. First of all, it's the laws. Our laws are a mess. That's one thing. Second is that in order for someone to get here, go through the whole process to get citizenship or even just get here, there's a lot of different agencies that are involved and they don't coordinate with each other. There's also, I think, a lack of motivation. I was talking to somebody that used to work for USCIS, and he said, because he was one of the people I contacted this week about hearing the story, because I thought that maybe somebody from USCIS should hear it. And he said that he didn't know anyone that would be, that should hear it, because it was about religious persecution. And he said, we were discouraged from even knowing like the contacts of people in other departments there. And it's like, this explains just like this very fragmented communication. So that feeds into it. The other part of it is that when Trump was president, he completely decimated our resettlement system. And so it's not just about issuing visas to come. You have to have a structure in place for helping people to get settled. And that was basically destroyed by Trump. And so all of this has to be rebuilt. They have these resettlement agencies, right? And so they have to go out and find the resources to resettle people and help for them. So what Welcome Corps does, it basically gives you the end, like the people that will resettle and help individual families. And it allows sponsor groups of 5 people or more, or an organization, to sponsor a refugee family. And so it gets the end in place to speed up the rest of it. So that's Welcome Corps. When it was announced in January, I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's just what we need. But right now it's only open for people who are in the refugee system already. And there was supposed to be a second phase. They called it phase 2. They now call phase 2 naming. I don't know why. But anyway, that was supposed to start in July. Or they said mid-2023. It's still not open. And then if you go and look on the Welcome Corps website, it says in 2023. We're just a few weeks away. Still not open. But we've been waiting for that, because I was hoping that if that would open, then maybe I could find some sponsors for family groups, right? Still hasn't opened. So in July, when phase 2 was supposed to be open, what they did announce was Welcome Corps on campus, which I think this is a good idea. Like, once they get this all in place, I think this would be a good idea. It's basically kind of but allowing universities and colleges to act like resettlement centers. And the thing is, when I've been talking to my people, they're like, why can't we go to a camp in the U.S. while they're processing it? You know, they are familiar with refugee camps in Pakistan, in the humanitarian city. You know, there's basically kind of a camp for a lily pad for Afghan allies that are still waiting there to be resettled. And I said, well, we don't have that in the United States. But what the Welcome Corps on campus is going to be is that students between the ages of 18 and 24 will be able to come on a visa, go to college, and then their families can come with them. And that can kind of be, the universities will kind of help them get acclimated and settled there, which I thought that was a great idea. I am looking at all these things from the perspective of, I need help for the Afghans. No, there's like an entire world of people that, where people are in crisis. The kicker about that, specifically for the Afghans, is that, again, it's limited for ages 18 through 24. And there are a number of people in my group that were in college when the Taliban took over. They're too old for that now. So that's not going to be an option for them. Because it seemed to me like they don't, to go into that program, they have to meet all the other requirements for being accepted into the university. And the thing is, not only have they been out of school for 2 years, since 2021, when the Taliban took over, but it's even further than that. It goes back to before the pandemic started, because the schools closed in Afghanistan when the pandemic started. So you're talking about 2020. So we're looking at almost 4 years. So as far as Afghans, there's only a very small sliver of people that would apply to. Number one, that would have the secondary education that would allow them to apply to a university and that aren't too old. I think I can think of the only people that it would apply to would be, or that would be able to fit into that, would be people who had just graduated from their high school and hadn't yet been able to enter. And other than that, I don't know. There's a brother and sister in our group. She's still, I think, at the age where that would fit for her. But then I don't know about her brother, because we have very restrictive and kind of anti-family immigration approach. So you can bring your children, I think under 21, I think is the age, but like parents, I don't know that they can come on the same application. This brother and sister, they consider themselves a family unit. I don't know that if the sister was able to come through this Welcome Corps on campus, I don't know if her brother would be allowed to come, and he's basically like her head of household. We kind of have a dysfunctional way of seeing the family unit. For example, there's one family that just came into our group, and it's the oldest son, and he is basically the head of household. He's taking care of the rest of them, his mother, his siblings, and most of them are over 21. I think there's one brother that's under 18, but Germany is resettling them as a group, as a family unit. If they were coming to the U.S., I don't think we would. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so. So all of these things. And then, so this is, I don't know. This is kind of discouraging. I saw an article. It said Minnesota leads the nation in Welcome Corps groups. So like I said, there can be sponsor groups of 5 people or more, or organizations. And Minnesota has done the most resettlement of this. And you want to know how many they have? 10. 10 sponsor circles. So I'm assuming that just means 10 families, which is kind of depressing. But even that, I mean, there's all these anti-immigration xenophobes that are putting out all this propaganda on Twitter. There was somebody that said 2 things this week. There's someone, which I hope was a sock puppet account, was flipping out about, they saw somebody that didn't speak English in a grocery store and they're super offended because they didn't know the right side of the aisle to walk on. Can you believe that? Can you believe that you have such a privileged life that you can find nothing else to get upset over other than that? That's completely ridiculous. Anyway, so there was that, and then there was this whole string of comments, which again, I hope it was just a sock puppet campaign about, oh yeah, I see all these in Minnesota. Like, oh, why? Because you have some people from Somalia, like 10 flippin' sponsor groups that have brought families over. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You need a little bit more DNA diversity in Minnesota anyway. But going on from that, the other thing that was trending on, at least for me, on Twitter, there's some idiot redneck sheriff, I guess he's a real sheriff, I don't know, that's what he calls himself, running for Senate in Arizona, that was claiming that when immigrants cross the border, they get a $5,000 gift card and plane tickets wherever they want. I don't know what else, something else. I was like, it's a total lie. There's actually the USCIS, actually, I don't know if it was USCIS or Border Patrol. Maybe it was Border Patrol. They actually have a video that says they get nothing from us. The government does not provide anything for people who come and claim asylum. They don't. If you come and claim asylum, you need to make sure that you have somebody a friend here that can help you, because you can't work for, I can't remember, it's like 90 days, 180, I don't know. They get like a parole, and once they can't get a work permit for a period of time after that. So you have to have somebody to help you. Other than that, if people crossing the border get anything, it's from nonprofits and churches that are helping them. It's not your tax dollars. But they're putting out this lie out there. Gateway Pundit was publishing it. It's like total propaganda. You know what I think it is? So I've mentioned before that, again, all these people talking about open borders are completely ignorant. There's no such thing. If there is, please send me a message at contact@racetowalk.org and tell me how that works. But there's not. So they're liars. But they do that for propaganda. Again, it's political propaganda. But people in other countries hear that and think that if they make it to the border, that they're going to be good. 65% of all asylum cases are rejected. They get deported. 90% in Texas are. But they put that out there, and people in other countries watch our media too, and they think it's true, even though it's not. So there's that. And at some point, I have to wonder, is that intentional? Are you intentionally putting it out there, saying there's open borders, to draw more people to come, to create more of a burden and a crisis on our system? Because Biden's policies are actually in some ways more restrictive than Trump's are. So were they saying that when Trump was president? I don't think so. So to me, it seems intentional. I do think that this whole, all the lies about that they get gift cards and plane tickets, that not only is that political propaganda to gin up xenophobes in the U.S., but also to entice more people to come thinking that they're going to get these things, right? To try to get more of a draw for people and more people to come. Sometimes I don't even want to look at my messages on Twitter. It's just some of the messages I get. But anyway, don't believe people when they say there's open borders or that illegals are getting all these things. It's not true. It's not true. If people get anything, it's because there are nonprofits and organizations that see them as human beings, and particularly Christians who believe that Jesus meant what he said in Matthew 25, that if we don't help people in need, that we're going to hell. People should kind of read that sometimes, I think. In Afghanistan itself, some people, they seem to think that we did all the heavy lifting in Afghanistan. We were essentially withdrawn in 2013. Obama withdrew most of our forces, and we had very minimal troops in Afghanistan when we pulled out in 2021. And really all that they needed was more support and military backup. Stephen Jensen talks about that a lot. And even in spite of the fact that we are literally funding the Taliban, there are still Afghan forces that are resisting against the Taliban. And this week there was a report about a Freedom Front attack on the Taliban. So they haven't given up. So anyway, I think I'm going to call it a day. I'll have some more stories on the article that I published on my website at racetowalk.org that accompanies this live stream. Anything I talk about, I try to include links in documenting it. But again, if you'd like to support any of our families, just go to dawnshireministries.org and select Race to Walk. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great week. And wherever you're at, I hope you're able to do some good. Thanks.